Okay, cool. Anyone not good? Ow. Just poked my eye.
1 second. My Excel is being weird.
Okay.
Alright, I'm all good.
Coppell. Just nod. If you're good.
I'm good.
Okay, fine. I affirm the possession of nuclear weapons is immoral. Contention 1, crisis instability. The industrial order is imploding. Nuclear abolition regardless of its temporary drawbacks is a gold path threat, otherwise no extinction. Robinson et al. 23. We face identified from conflict at any time through Russian to move, Putin starts to break down arms control, details and technology. China's city advanced arsenal. It's voting Pakistan, North Korea's defiance, unlike previous seconds when moved side public support. There's limited pressure to use nuclear weapons. It's highly likely they'll be used even limited nuclear war. That's been to kill 2 million full scale, could kill 5 billion people. Guarantee complete abolition. Because international effort is needed. Politicians subscribe to real policy, subscribe to our minister, naive, rely on questionable assumptions. The bonds turn the world into a prison. The only way to win is not to play. Accidents, corruption, and human error make cumulative probability hit the roof. Bell 23. Corruption against the flawed rational choice argument, mistreating attack, and reputation, leave information, all we do aggressive, promotes the believe actions are possible, regulators never get responsibility, records, skeptical calls, actions of realness, statistics, broken arrow, 14 day residents of North Carolina, multiplication signals with friend, protocols initiated in 2007, 6 months were loaded onto a bomber, indicated by gamma chance, long possibilities about zero, so likely to occur, uncertainty, which had Russia possessing enormous arsenal, so control corruption, dissent, and seeking steps, items, galaxies, rationality, so while time is running out, correcting hard biases, which shape your risk calculus away from our impacts, relative to avoid direction of efficiency, to operate without some avoid force, the continuing good background, not even good management, disaster, improbable air, once it expect low forever, expectation for railroad active versus hard to turn people, actually been not fair, same material nuclear war. Millionaire with reason complaints to this is true, low frequency, high impact risk, taking as evidence to practice the same animal carbon producers for nuclear war, like the dangerous time evidence arise, just force all disaster loss, crowded biases and credits to global cost of nuclear war, fraud, cost long future generation nuclear war, seen as long-term release threshold for radical change of any event of non-zero probabilities, by materials, you see nuclear war is now, World War III is imminent. Trump is off the radar. Russia is probing NATO now. She sees the US is distracted, and Kim just doubled his missile production in week 26. Iran fully prepared for response to U.S. intervention. Trump new imperialist project, unilateral some evidence, just president, Bureau of Safety Third World War coast and advertisers worse since last June. Summer look dragging U.S. Russia, China, both back down threat from Iran's nuclear program, heightened claim by Trump to debunk Russia, ready to start emergency scale, Putin ready if necessary. Provocation of the NATO pinch points, begin testing the defenses for Russian cruise missile, or another escalation. Trump and both Russia's efforts encourage attack, force all out conflict. Beijing sees island as a dual part announced Taiwan's party, which won a third term last year, held lab fire drills, tested new ships. Taiwan mission to the 7th century of the Pele. Trump focused on reaching change by calculation to structure global competition. North Korea last week fired ballistic missiles. Kim called the double tactical and weapons, conducted test firing warship, launched nuclear missiles. China pressure to open new fronts to China contain Taiwan. New tech magnifies escalation risk by breaking strategic stability, only disarm Sauls. Star 25. Emerging remind nuclear stability could replace nukes. AI, cyber advanced hypersonic exposed threat to research calculation faster renewable modern missiles. Threat early warning systems, delivery platform states, start out preemptive posture, swarm sensors, makes up detectable, eliminate sensors right way out, eliminate nuclear arsenals, credibility of nuclear debatable, enormously destructive, black credibility, water conventional website, file, audible, no ground. Data poisoning is unique, escalation vector, Falcon, all 23. Modern cities rely on computer systems, cyber exploitation, including the viewers without data retaliatory option, components making comprehensive supply chain, continuous malicious code, spoofing, inject false data into key systems, hiding missiles or creating false signals, likely by non-pure or terrorist group to switch model, represent individual safeguards, power launcher, attack posture, gives opportunity for some weakness, creating acceptance, trust, early warnings, where abuses and chain begins, resident informed by vulnerable data in high stress environment, nuclear war causes extinction and collapses the environment, Bonachek et al. 23. Detonation direct physical effects, speeds and mortalities of air, species make capacity to reproduce, cascading effects on terrestrial and marine life, contamination last thousands of years, immediate effects on air quality, biodiversity, deforestation, wildfires, habitat, water soils would increase significantly, plume, alter climate globally, radiation less, oxygen lower, temperature by fact, planet activity causing decline, nuclear production, food security, contaminate, making agriculture in favor of consumption, wildfires, extend damage, spread particles, destroy forests, wetlands, and biodiversity hotspots, accelerate extinction, directly hamper survival, decision-makers, understand causes of nuclear war, nuclear conflict unhabitable ecosystem, they are saved by moving far from measures that make the planet habitable, conventional deterrence, Trump's nuclear run, log 23. Nuclear weapons are relevant for deterrence, like by development or society, for advanced presence of nukes, for destruction of conventional military. Examining key flashpoints carry air, Israeli war, nuclear deterrence strategies more provocative, subject to use of force and episodes involving USA and Soviet outcome determined by conventional military balance at local level of the nuclear arsenal manufacturer, irrespective of severity, non-nuclear states to dispute with nuclear power more likely to escalate. Even when parties nuclear weapons will not fight conflict initiated. Only examples, decisively disprove deterrence, Blueprints 15. Limited deterrence rule that nuclear weapons will prevent prolonged since 1960 wrong for dynamite, submarines, artillery, smokeless powder, machine gun, and poison gas. Nuclear armed states are fought from 1969 clash between China and Russia, between India and Pakistan. Nuclear armed states attacked by non-nuclear states, U.S. troops attacked by Chinese forces 1950, Vietnamese 1960s, Israel, with Syria and 1973, Iraq in 1991, 1982, Argentina invaded Falkland Islands. Contention 2's framework. The existence of political formulations demands a pragmatic approach to moral truth from a state-centered perspective. Ronheimer 05. Political philosophy works in interaction most cases realization of philosophy which restrict from realizability due to fail. Political philosophy is not meant for practical those contingent matters, unlike norms and general rule action of a person, establishing rules by which a multitude of regulated political actions are actually the whole, so some person to rule others. Subjects rule over free persons, therefore needs justification and search of consent. A practical approach to ethics does not require nebulous notions of absolute certainty. 124 teaching can contain only beliefs that are absolute certain we can carry out effectively. No reason to adopt inquiries occur within context or teaching strategy or belief and aspirates for holding it on to practice, but to make single individuals absolute judges, truth, most prediction, sciences, people in agreement with theory reach on probation until agreement reach when we go wrong. Further discussion can identify errors possible possibility of errors for reason we follow this, not skeptics. Only consequentialism is suitable for the pragmatic approach by understanding beliefs based on the effect the world around us. Util is a necessary metamorality to arbiter and moral agreements to a common metric of routine. We need a metamorality when choice among competing values, perhaps more question of objective answers, even that's true. Knowing that's not much help, we have to choose. The pragmatic agreement and shared values, the currency for weighing values based on experience we all care about. We all want to be happy, none of us want to suffer. Concern for happiness and suffering lies behind everything we value, is false, no one loves what everyone gets. It doesn't require magical abilities to measure happiness, constantly calculating it's our best kind of life. Anti-nuclearism is compatible and complementary with broader forms of resistance, but can only be harnessed through legal change. Action 22. Those who possess nukes argue prevent conflict, but not abstract made to destroy flesh, turn humans into shadows, employing gaslighting, the bottom most extreme expression of violence of the patriarchal racist capitalist world to people struggling daily. Abolition of nukes may not seem priority, but these are used to protect invincibility and possess their critical monopoly on violence. Those engaged banning learn from feminist, queer, indigenous struggles, impacting framework from civil rights, BLM, suffrage, Me Too, American Indian movement, I don't know more, Standing Rock, movements build, shift, evolve over time, iterative, ongoing, everyone demanding abolition of police, redirection of military spending, envisioning more equitable world order, collaborative with nuclear abolition debates together. No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is the affirmative fiat disarm?
We think nuclear weapons are immoral. We think when you say something is immoral, you imply it should not happen. We think that the AF says that nuclear possession should not happen.
Yeah, nuclear possession shouldn't happen, but my question is, I suppose in a political sense, do you fiat that disarm is a result of vote affirmative?
Like, I think that that's obviously what the resolution means. We think that we'll defend the resolution as stated. That's what we have on the doc. That's what we read. I think that that probably is what the resolution means, but I think we could probably still win if it didn't.
Okay, that's fine. I suppose then conventional deterrence trumps a nuclear wrong. I guess why? Why would conventional warfare not lead to extinction? Nuclear warfare?
Well, that's a different question. Do you want to know why conventional
Yeah.
deterrence trumps a nuclear wrong, or why would conventional war not cause extinction?
No, that's the evidence I'm referring to. My question is, why does conventional warfare not cause extinction in the same way nuclear war would?
We don't think anything is as destructive as nuclear weapons. We've read evidence about the effects of nukes. I don't think we've said claims about like conventional war happening. I think we would dispute the link between those claims.
Wait, conventional war wouldn't happen? I suppose I'm confused. Would war not escalate from a conventional one to a nuclear one, or is your argument that in the status quo?
I genuinely do not understand your question. Like, what are you asking? Are you asking why a conventional war becomes a nuclear war? Or are you asking, would a conventional war without nukes cause extinction?
Probably the latter.
Okay, I don't think so. We've read evidence about the effect of nuclear weapons on the environment. We haven't read evidence about anything else. If the 1NC introduces those claims, we think we get to respond to them. But we also would dispute the link. We don't think we cause conventional war.
Okay. Now I want to ask about the framework page. Beginning with this first card, the Ronheimer card.
Sure.
I suppose, what does it mean for an approach to be pragmatic?
Pragmatic deals with inquiry. Our argument is that our claims, like we've made a claim that collectively we can come through deliberating to come to more correct ethical conclusions, which is the leg evidence. We've said that we should take a pragmatic approach in context of states, because states represent people with different viewpoints. We think this resolution is a question because all of the actors that possess nuclear weapons are states, that we're asking a normative question about what those states should do. Because those states represent people with different perspectives, the deliberative potential, and the fact that deliberation proves that even if we can't agree on many things, we can agree on the importance of pleasure and badness of pain, that's what we should prioritize.
Okay, what is pleasure and what is pain?
I think that question concedes the validity of pleasure because it concedes the validity of a satisfying answer. Pleasure is like good, pain is bad. Like
what is satisfying?
Satisfying, we could keep going, but it's the feeling that you get when you feel good.
Okay. I'm sending out the 1NC is 3 off, and then case. Case is framework, and then the advantage.
Okay. 3 off, and then the advantage.
No, it's framework and then the advantage.
Yeah, that's what I said. All right.
Okay.
3 off, framework, and then the advantage. Okay, I'll tell you when I have the doc.
Okay.
I don't see it yet. let you know when I see it. Okay, I see it now. I'm gonna open this. 1 and C. Open it. Okay, let me just mute myself. Or it's still opening. Wait, sorry.
I'm ready whenever.
Okay. I'm still opening here. Okay, cool. I am good to go.
Cool. Interpretation: the use of the word moral is biased under moral obligation. Alexander, 1852. The idea of morality was moral obligation or moral act ought not to be a performed contradiction. To say the act was a moral obligation to perform a moral act ought not be done. This common intuition above every conception of morality. Therefore, Sir T.T. Hendricks, 13. Moral conceptions are universally prescriptive categorical facts as distinct from amoral. Mere most and indeed, moral and amoral have different meanings. A moral describes something against pre-established morals. Immoral describes something like morals prefer. Additionally, providing this, ethics have to be non-arbitrary. Otherwise, activists could opt out. Their part is no intent to find any of the in resolution, even if it's more pragmatic. You should prefer violation. 8. Arminian dilemma. Evolution appeals for goodness. 306. We can have these illusions bigger but cause them. There is an evolutionary series coincidence between content truth and the content evolution leads us to expect badness to vendor a sensation that the user has to take it be bad is finding badness and do not reflect the evaluated attitudes. B is our gap academy. 4 is unity is our gap where we things are cannot be evidence where things ought to be realized or analogy. Everyone of the limits will all break for me. And C time relativity theory means events are predetermined. If you convert in 96, affinity is real with the southern observers normally a very fast future is event B for future traveler. There is an event C which lies in past from east perspective. C hasn't happened yet. An event in your future is and someone else's past is determined special relativity has an extreme largely confirmed economics and knowledge is more reasonable to accept determinism than to reject it. That necessarily negates NSC and no presumption. Except the current system are sufficient until proven otherwise. So plan is not needed. Independently, extra topicality is voting issue. They do not feel the plan action is being status quo. See from cross. It's like conquest is a global construction of modernity and the expropriation of violence of the colony, big eyes of benevolence, paternal racialization, hegemony is nothing but a reason consent to anti-black, anti-indigenous subjugation, the institutional crafting of the global order form the conditions of possibility for genocidal, ecocidal, white being that will permanently destroy our planet. Is 20. Confounding hegemony or historical continuity of its image but subject to anti-black racial planning madness is realized in image of nations of the safe harbor establishing economic diplomacy social order to become apartheid nation state parents order cataracts it categorizes racial market displays people as alien for murder fabric to means of intellectuality of market apartheid institutionalized the church and that exclusion possible economic consenting because those sexual assault violence and lynching constituted ruling regimes of dominant social order including ecological genocide as people are exterminated their environment is disregarded abuse hegemony presumes non-consensual power of conquest handling and racial planning wars possibility for modern politicality. The one you see is from a hegemonic anti-nuclearism, which is by maximum security of conventional ships, military, industrial complex, and global racial capitalism, regime 22. Hegemonic anti-nuclearism took place with non-proliferation conflict of countries economic institutes government agencies determinated to disperse disarm within a normative understanding of the weapons in relation to state of power rather than consenting to the ones that rose to construction disparate resources of nature rather than arsenals but narrowly looking at the discourse reproduces conception of the security or strategic substitution with conventional weapons of discipline and hegemonic nuclearism and anti-nuclearism community or their defensive incrementalism via the rhetorical investment into the project of government and disarm revised nuclear modernization Act 21. The stepping stones of nuclear abolition religious actions for decades and by governments grouping modernizing nuclear capabilities and nuclear threat making matters of all except the larger nations for nuclear with weapons because these provisions of a war without nuclear weapons may enhance those key to retain modernized profit off nuclear arms from nuclear actors equal to elimination of nuclear arsenals rhetorical position of the tragic disarm will have that from renouncing deterrence be a procedural problem bad actors are only these features to the nuclear order the notion of accidents warfare is a myth that justifies the impunity for genocide at the level of state level 17. Accidentalization of war is not just an accidental but mobilization of accidentalized machine distance for precision reproduce of passivity becoming on complicity in the era of genocide and war accidentalization against opposition of the internal and silences war containerization uses evasion of accountability and oversight legitimate visibility decriminalization of the protected sex of power offshore the governmentality through installations of sovereignty. The alternative is a red deal engagement or culture repatriate indigenous lands and abolish contingent possibility for existential genocide while 23. There is no way out of this crisis without social people coming to a combination surrounded by the world's liberation, indigenous liberation, and decolonization or extinction in this land. A critical point is to avoid planetary extinction, to upload knowledges, technologies, government structures, and economic strategies that will make the future held in land at the center. The red deal stands for caretaking and creating relations between the human and the other, the human worlds on the planet devastated by capitalism. The red deal extends this principle to cultural institutions such as military police and systems calling for their abolition. The responding purpose of institutions seem to be for a safe future, be housing, the healthcare, and the education, free jobs, must also be anti-imperialist and include human and broken climate debt to the rest of the world. Our interpretation is that the alternative has to be on the basis of the apps representations and assumptions, scale accountability, and anything else, green lights racist rhetoric, upholding their advocacy, accessibility is the ultimate unfairness, constraints both the existence and ethicality of the activity, meaning 1% risk come to persist. Yes, balance all tier models, if it is gain come to incentive should be weaponized. Only explanation provide chance to be briefly shifted, and the activity project when your theory is not a valid check for abuse, we don't have a green heart to lie by 3 minutes of the 2 we are, unreached our habits of the mind, our internalized via repetition, compulsion, absence, extreme, 21. Patterns of neurobiological dynamics and sensory order coordinates are more performed more repeated, they become unstable if not exercised enough as objects is not modulated by schemas for engaging self-maintenance and contingent hypotheses of appropriate environment, depends on social resources, individual and actions prescribing certain modes of co-experience of apologizing others, one price or biological dynamics, which meaning characterizing an active performance is subject to a systematic better or worse explicit Nigerian implicit disapproval of habits of the man community of the LGBT people facing should to marginalized, develop the decisions to participate and correct those who don't. Third off. Counterplanned possession of nuclear weapons is moral possession categorically excludes usage in Euro 15. Order to an action that contrasts when you trust business power represents states through little movement, allowed dynamic and movement. So conjugate to test the after multiple angles, escape clash, no one error, the argument that constrain negative competition of UC, NC post facto is arbitrary because there's no function of the plaintext from which a negative can be which kills like ground. Case. Pragmatism is wrong. 1. The app is worse. The plaintext is not a praxis. 2. The alt is material land restoration, coalition building, common justice movements, indigenous grassroots activism, etc. are not just philosophical. The actions and evidence is wrong. The ignorant evidence takes it out. The state pretends to listen to black and queer people, but refuses to actually disarm. This is happened across administrations, as proven through the multiple empirics in the card. Now, the advantage proper. 1. This calculation is myth. In 23. This calculation ignorance or assume ignorance or exclusion that RBA judgment historians struggle to reduce that leaders are ignorant across 8 years of the new engagement program in the US and Soviet and less developed countries are having few accidents and none less resolution. These studies find corroborating examples and exhaustive studies not to count as equal case of inception. 2. No accidents lower than 22. Accidents never have safety systems for 100%. The practice is equal given water safety systems change the back of the net or even lower nuclear design both the sun can enable these systems with multiple checks is good reason. We have never had an action of voice calculus has nothing to do with it. Now corruption. 3rd. No corruption based launches, bureaucratic and institutional safeguards prevent rogue use, but it could be used in the worst case. Aliens pain. Can the president last strike? No, there is no magic lever. Hundreds of thousands of people in Yanis sea monitoring events and protocols concluded this is the other scenario. The president I want to strike. That raised alarm throughout the entire chain of command. They were trained to disobey orders of context matters who would stagger with no context crisis alert would raise questions, chief of staff and SA and JC would halt the process. The human element is key and the professionalism of commanders and advisory team would be crucial. 4. Inevitability is empirically disproven. 9 and 3. Some arcs long as nukes would exist wars inevitable metaphor. Flip point is misleading and assumes independent probabilities or was lower probability after the cubic missile crisis leaders never from the law of acquisition of the apply accidental war are real still limited and trigger future actions that limit larger war on reciprocated steps could avoid an aggressive survival does not require absence of all risk. 5. Each emerging tech listed is wrong. Generally, authors have bias. According to 22. Emerging tech play with lack of understanding of the type of take to measure adoption challenges in real world effects include AI and space hypersonics, quantum and biotech and amazing technology economy, game changing, greatest discussion takes place before commissioner usability and publicity are for latest type of source disillusionment where limitations come to court. Attention does not represent take assessment flexible of the actors, media, pro and revolution experts look beyond and what are the question of effectiveness and A. Cyber attacks actors can never cause destruction alone again in 22. Conduct these never against the systems as hard as state and conduct these in secret that mitigate escalation to cause a response. The state would have to detect the likelihood of flow because the state would have to try to keep sensitive bombs and secret to the final nature of it and cyber weapons really cause destruction is reliant on cyber attacks which is impossible. I didn't read the Lewis 20 card and the Cox 21 card.
Cool. Good?
Yep.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the counter plan. What's the net benefit?
The net benefit, well, 1 is the critique and 2 is the Hayesi and Euro evidence.
The what?
Well, I guess like solvency.
The net benefit is solvency? Okay. Why is that possible?
Huh?
Why is that possible?
Why is what? Like solving the AF?
No, you said the net benefit is the card. I'm wondering why you think that card is net beneficial?
It says that possession categorically has to be in usage. Because if you possess a nuclear weapon, then you can't be launching it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that the case?
Scenario.
Wait, why is possession distinct from use? Where does it say use?
Because if you, well, I guess like it says action instead of usage. I would argue that they're synonymous, but
Okay.
Either way, it's kind of intuitive in the context of nuclear weapons. If you launch a nuclear weapon, then it's no longer in your basement.
Okay. Cool. I want to talk a little bit about the critique. What part of the 1AC do you disagree with?
Few parts. So the Eaglet evidence is a critique of the 1AC support for the logic of disarmament. The Ritchie evidence says that your frame of conventional warfare is something that is able to, resolve the dilemma of deterrence. It should be problematized. And then the Feldman evidence criticizes like the AF's framing of warfare as something that can possibly be accidental, which is a form of
Okay, why is it bad to assume that war could ever be accidental?
Because war is simply not accidental. It is a product of the order of racial capitalism that enabled the conditions of possibility for warfare.
So I see that seems to indicate that like war can be intentional sometimes. Why does that mean that it could never be accidental? Or I guess why can So is there argument like war itself could never be, or can you walk me through what the card actually says?
Like your argument is that accidental warfare is possible, but our argument is that that frame effaces the way in which all forms of content stem from a root of racial capitalism, imperialism, and conquest.
Okay, Sure.
Because the systems and conditions of possibility for that work to take place.
What does it mean to
were very
compete
intense
off of
and
the
very
AFs?
cost harm.
What does it mean to compete off of the AFs, reps, and assumptions?
That means that if we win a link to either of those things, then the alternative competes.
Okay, cool. What is an assumption?
An assumption, that's a good question. I suppose like a baseline sort of understanding that the affirmative has in order to make any of its claims.
Okay. I want to talk about topicality, or no, not that. Eglin card seems to be like a critique of like the Trump and Biden administration like kicking disarm down the road. Why does that relate to the 1AC?
It's about the idea of advocacy for disarm as being valuable, or specifically locating disarmament within political systems.
Okay. Cool. I'll send the doc. It's just gonna be or let me just send it first. Here you go. We'll do the case framing. The case framing, and then the case offense, and then T, and then the counter plan, and then the K. Sounds good?
Yeah, just
Winning
want
the
to
dog.
Okay. Just let me know when you have it.
Okay, I got the email. Let me just. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Case framework.
Can you repeat the order one more time?
Yeah,
Yes,
I was
sir.
about to. Case framework, case offense, then T, and then the possession pick, and then the K. Sounds good?
Okay.
Okay. Pragmatism is correct because the only things that have nuclear weapons are states. Alt being material doesn't matter. We'll answer that there. Eglin states pretend to listen will be answered on the K. No solvency K cannot be offense because the bad people can still have a more obligation to drop. Util is true that all agents value pleasure and disvalue pain. Relevant on the other page. Now, the case proper miscalculation is true. They don't assume new technology. Leaders are not rational. Dropped indict from the Bell and Riddle evidence that says that human psychology does not hold up in high stress situations. Yes, accidents does not assume dual use technology like AI and drone swarms, which overwhelm the possibility for nuclear second strike to be possible in the first place. That's the sour evidence. The argument about no corruption, that's not our argument. Our argument is corruption means info is not relayed up because it's not the best people for the job. That's Rendell. Yes, we're not extending inevitability. They dropped every uniqueness argument, so we don't need to win it. Russia testing nuclear weapons now, provoking because they view the U.S. as distracted and want to invade Europe. China wants Taiwan, and North Korea will invade South Korea soon. That's all the weak evidence. Emerging tech authors. Our author is a PhD, not biased. It is game-changing because hypersonics and AI are fast and overwhelm radar systems. That's 26 hour. Their authors comparatively less qualified. Cyber, it doesn't assume our argument because it's about hacking nukes, not causing actual destruction. Now, topicality. We are not extra topical. It is meaning present tense. Just because we have to prove an immoral means obligation in the status quo, which we've said exists. We need to prove an obligation in the SWO. We need use plan in a vacuum, alternatives are arbitrary, evaluate through offense defense. We can be more or less certain about various propositions. That's the leg evidence. Hendricks is out of context about their conceptual claim for the purpose of their paper. Leg says we come to be more certain through deliberation over time. Agents opting out happens regardless. Only util carries normative weight through common interest. Darwinian dilemma. Use preference. Green says all agents do evaluate. It's one thing we can deliberately agree on. If we could have evolved differently, we didn't. Is-ought doesn't exist. There's no reason there must be one. Pleasure is universally good, so ought to be maximized. Determinism has no implication. Util it's only about end states. If volcano was predetermined to erupt, we could still say it had disutility. They are wrong. Egger 19. Bell test determinism measuring quantum states emitted by radioactive decay. Determinism is not true. Predictable probabilities never certainty never know. Certain scientifically false. No real debate. Free will is possible. Now, the possession counter plan. If you can't possess anymore, then you can't use anymore in the first place because possession, getting rid of ownership would obviously get rid of that. Perm do both. There's no net benefit. I can't use something that I don't have. Nullifying nukes as a voter could fiat out of any use ever. It's impossible to prove that it is intrinsically bad in and of itself because anything could be bad. Like my computer could be bad for use for bad purposes, but they allow it to get out of any purpose. Links to the K because it allows nukes to continue existing, which their Eglin evidence says is a bad thing. The K. Framework, vote affirmative if the 1AC is holistically a good idea. Debating for the res announced in advance is unfair. And it's 6 minutes of 1AC offense voting and pick their win condition. That's best because it forces a negative. Connect their research and epistemology links to the advocacy of the 1AC. That forces nuance, specific application of broader theories to specific proposals, which hones portable advocacy skills. And refines politics. It's also the only way to accept outcomes. Letting the exclude 6 minutes of our offense to go for an author in deck K means we're inadequately prepared to test our ideas at second and third level, which foregoes as epistemic humility from an argument comparison. It means the L is internalized the problem with their strategy rather than with our research. We'll answer their arguments here. The alt competing off reps and assumptions is arbitrary. There's no basis for what is an assumption. Assumption could be anything. that the world exists, the sky is blue, cross-sex, with shifting on this, it allows them to make anything. We assume an author's research is good becomes a win condition. Does not greenlight racism because they can always stop the round debate is a voluntary activity, and they can choose not to go to TAP or FD as a judge to decide. Yes, ballot solvency doesn't matter because trends are because of outside community discussions. Repetition compulsion does not assume debate where we switch sides. Read arguments we disagree with and read topical and non-topical asks proven by their own arguments. We can agree U.S. hegemony is bad. We are not anti-hegemonic hegemonism or whatever their cards are about. We are not part of the non-proliferation complex because we're not setting military arms control, which is what their Egwin evidence and their Ritchie evidence is in context of. It's about the context of denying, quote, rogue states the access to nukes, which we did not say. We said all nukes are bad, so how can that be incrementalism in the first place? It is about normative political processes. We said it's most likely way it would happen in the real world, but obviously we're saying it's always immoral. It is not accidental war, it's intentional war, but accidental escalation. Accidents can happen, obviously. It didn't say it's always an accident. Obviously, the unique disclosures we've made are because of racial capitalism or whatever. They could be right about that, but they wouldn't solve it. Our Sauer evidence says it could be an intentional first strike. Perm do both. Net benefit is state invincibility. Action says everyday struggles must unify around disarmament. Nuke stop moves. People engaging in them believe it's impossible. It's necessary for energy in the interim. We can agree jobs and whatnot are valuable and still say the 1EC is valuable. Interrupt all can't do the plan. Anything else is too late breaking and allows them to steal all of the case with a minute research net benefit. Case outweighs one paternalism. Even if the dad decides life is not worth living, billions of people who continue to live amidst poverty and dispossession agree and it's wrong to make choices on their behalf. Two, things always get worse. 25. We should accept disaster and learn to die. Misguided learn. Complete extinction of life will never be lost. The decade that follows continue more suffering less. Disaster is not ever completed. It's our duty to prevent what suffering we can. That card is marked at what suffering we can.
Okay. What were all the issues?
Are you taking prep? Alt can't do the plan, but that's like based on our framework interp. That's it. Or nullifying nukes bad.
Sorry, what was that? Nullifying links?
Nullifying nukes is bad.
What was the standard?
The
Or I guess
standard.
you should just explain the argument.
Sure. The argument was on the counter plan. I said that you could fiat out of any use of them ever, which is impossible for the aft to win because we would have to prove it's like intrinsically bad in itself. But anything could be bad. So not letting us so making this counter plan be distinct from the aft was a bad thing.
What was the interbond framework? The intertext?
Vote AF if the 1EC is holistically a good idea. and then we impact turned your interp after that, but that's the same argument.
It'll be the counterplan, then the critique, K will start on framework, then the K proper.
Counterplan, then K. Okay, one sec. Counterplan, and then K.
You said the K starts on framework?
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
one sec. Where's framework? Let me just move framework down so it's separated. Moving it down. Okay, that's not even gonna work. Okay, fine. I'm good. Let me mute myself.
Okay. Super easy place for you to vote negative is on the counterplan. If you possess nuclear weapons, you definitionally cannot launch them. That is what the Haiti and Euro evidence says. The only terminal to extinction was nuclear war, but nuclear war only happens because nuclear weapons stop being in the possession of states when countries launch them at each other and they leave the arsenal, which means that the counterplan solves the entirety of the affirmative and all their impacts. The first argument they make is that if you can't possess them, you can't use, but this is just a reason that the app solves, not a reason why the counterplan does it. Now the permutation is wrong, it competes off the net benefit. Now the voting issue is wrong, it competes. We aren't yelling that something is bad, but that the converse of the plan is true. Worst case, drop the advocacy and consider it a presumption for it. And the logic of this voter is also infinitely regressive. They haven't explained what the interp is or how voting affirmative will solidify it. Now finally, they say it links to K and the equivalent evidence. Wrong. The equivalent evidence says that liberal calls for disarm, but believe that the state would ever actually do disarm is bad. But it's an even in question, because if it is true that extinction outweighs and nuke war is the only thing that causes it, then you should affirm continual possession in order to categorically ban nuclear war from ever taking place. And the net benefit is solvency, because one, any risk of rearmament as per the equivalent evidence means that the app cannot solve, and two, it's also the case because we don't claim to fiat disarm, which is illusory and only truly optimistic. And third, even if they do not link to the equivalent evidence, they have ultimately dropped that you can vote negative on presumption, because the app has not created an obligation to disarm nuclear weapons in the status quo. That was the extra T stuff. Framework? We will win framework, but even if we don't, we will win a thesis that makes your impacts inevitable, a link that turns case, and an all that solves. Framework is a question of models. We are not saying that Sterling is a racist individual, but that their model of debate centers pedagogical representations and assumptions, which is necessary for fair clash engagement in the first place. Our interpretation is that the all can compete off the basis of the app's assumptions and representations. Top level, we meet their interp. They say that the app is quote unquote holistically a good idea, which also has to include the app's assumptions and not just the plain text. Anything else arbitrarily reduces it. You shouldn't do work for them because you wrote a terrible interpretation, and competing interps justifies text over spirit. The May's evidence explicitly explains why an emphasis on epistemic investment is key to accountability, specifically in the context of the debate space. It uses things like neuroscience to prove that debate can shape our worldviews, and sanctioning their balance is key to shift behaviors, which means that regardless of any of their mitigatory defense, like all causes and switch sides, you know that neuroscience is on our side. And extend theory of power, you know that inevitably mainstream discussions of IR will pop up racializing justifications for their policy proposals to fund the military-industrial complex. This logic sees into the debate space under their model. Kids are never going to be forced to challenge their underlying assumptions and narratives behind their scholarship. I do not care if assumptions are explosive and can be quote-unquote anything, because our impacts definitely outweigh the marginal unfairness that is caused from that. One, is proximate violence for colonial subjects upon confrontation here, and two, is long-term internalization of those beliefs because of repetition, compulsion, and research processes. That outweighs because fairness is only contained to an individual debate round, or at most the debate as an activity, but accessibility controls whether or not we should show up in the first place, and subject formation is the only impact that actually permeates beyond this activity and enters things like school, family, friends, and religion, etc. Your ballot solves through representing competitive incentives. The only possible explanation for why trends have shifted in debate is because of ballot solvency. Arguments that win multiple times are more likely to be discussed, explored, and culturally respected. Think about it. If a judge never voted on disclosure as a theory argument, it would never be common practice. Now that answers the epistemic humility argument. They say stop the round. One is that will never realistically happen, even if we ask the judge to stop the round. It will never actually occur as a result of a violation of models. Remember, our argument is not about microaggressions, but a question of which model debate is better. And two is that this is net worse for agency because subjects of colonization should be able to advocate for themselves and win the ballot if they prove that they are right. And third is that technical litigation is net good. One is because speech times are necessary to attention span and for precision, and B is that it stops bias because technical litigation forces judges to leave it at the door. They say switch sides is true subject formation, but they've conceded 1% risk framing. Even if this is partially true, it doesn't matter because any risk of it definitely outweighs. Now, predictability is wrong. One, they cut every single card in the 1EC. App choice definitely solves. If they did their own research, they should be prepared to justify where it comes from and what purpose it serves rhetorically. And two, is that unpredictability is good. Critical thinking outweighs and forces debaters to think off their feet, which is more exploitable and real world than having months of pre-round preparation. Remember, all their fairness and clash impacts are internal link term. You should not preserve colonial clash and debate and fundamentalize indigenous people for clash for the sake of clash, which justifies proximate genocide. Linear risk of subject formation means that the content of clash has to matter. Again, 1% risk of subject formation outweighs on magnitude because lives. That means that racism is the ultimate unfairness. Their impact definitionally cannot outweigh because racism is both unfair and externally bad. That also answers the fairness paradox and all of the burnout arguments. Now, I guess the critique proper. You can extend the theory of power. Ecological destruction that threatens humanity independently will inevitably lead to extinction unless we dismantle racial capitalism and conquest. This is conceded. Now, the only response they have is part of a card that they didn't finish reading that also has no warrant, and it's also not in context of things like conquest. They have some themselves, things like climate change are root cause for extinction and their terminal impact, which means that you know that the theory of power makes their impacts inevitable. I'm going for the tragic disarmor link. It is fundamentally a K of their fiating of the plan. The link is clear. They see that political pragmatism is necessary to disarm, and that these sort of demands solve. The people in evidence says that their pledge of nukes being immoral is just a tool of imperialism to make weapons of mass destruction fade away to the public eye as peaceful virtue signaling. Conceded is found in real-world examples like Biden, Obama, and Trump who all claim that nukes are immoral but still take secret donations from companies like Raytheon. That means that the explicit belief that officials will respond to public criticism creates a guise of benevolence for the state. The impact is a reinvestment into the racial order the one has space. It produces cruel optimism by valorizing political disarm and a reformist policy to current politics. It turns case. It means celebrations of disarm rhetoric without policy change is only going to cause more rearmament post-plan, which means that even if the state's disarmed, they would just rearm their nukes in secret. Not go for the Feldman stuff, which means their offense doesn't apply. They say the app isn't incrementalism, but it doesn't matter if they say that all nukes are bad because the alternative still solves the app and the link turn. Extend the alt copper, the red deal entails return of land to indigenous people and abolition of genocidal structures, which is key to stopping existential levels of climate change by centering indigenous epistemics in favor of policy making. That solves 100%. We can agree that the possession of nukes is moral, but the key difference is that we also believe the possession of conventional warfare is moral, and we reject the assholes for government disarm as valuable political imaginary, and instead forward indigenous forms of agency. They say that the alt cannot be able to do the plan, but one, if anything else, person next to say that nukes are good, which is violent because it would deny the testimonies of black indigenous people who have suffered from nuclear testing, and two, regardless, drop the argument solves. Even if we're all over the fake, you should know abolition of security studies solves root cause behind the creation of nuclear weapons, and third is that picks are good for testing gas for multiple angles, and they also concede that the only warrant this is true is because the framework is for definitively winning. Now the permutation is wrong. We cannot prove abolition with reform. Again, they cannot prove the alt because we fundamentally rejected engagement with the state of political progress as a means of abolition, because empirically every single time that they've tried to create progress through the state has only been folded into the guise of benevolence in order to justify more genocide. Any risk of a link means that the permutation definitely does not solve.
Okay, cool. I have 4 minutes. Did I take prep for the 1 hour? I don't think I did, right?
No, you didn't.
Okay, cool. 4 minutes starting now.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick and I'll be right back.
The order is just gonna be, there's gonna be like an overview that should probably be on its own page, but you could also put it on the case page. And then there's gonna be the counterplan and the K. Sounds good? Okay. Cool. Then I'll start. Here. Battle story 1, the perm is good. They dropped the net benefit of the perm so the all fails without the plan. 2, if the all does, the plan is theoretically illegitimate. They dropped it turns their offense because we never compared distinct solutions, and dropped its two-way breaking, so it should be struck because it wasn't in the 1 and C. We'll answer their arguments when we get there, but all of them are reasons that they should have explicitly said it was a pick in the 1 and C. That doesn't mean they get neutral in our arguments. 3, we're going to win framework. Our framework interpretation is they can have their research links but must explain how they affect the plan's fiat and per their own characterization of it. We did lie about into their cards, and they didn't even try to explain. On framework, they will lose because they drop clash turns, substitution shift, and that we include their content. 4, the possession counterplan. First of all, when they extended their links, they said we fiat disarm on the case, so we'll just concede we do that because they said it. Second of all, the counterplans obviously cheating. Counterplans that nullify nukes are bad because they make it impossible to be AF drop. No way for us to prove they're intrinsically bad because quote, anything could be bad like my computer. There's no comparative literature on this, and they can delete every advantage ever. They have no fairness defense on this flow, so they shouldn't crossfly. But it's also bad for clash because it means we never get to compare solutions because they can just win on this sort of a priori argument, which also is the reason the counterplan's bad. Reject the counterplan also because it links to their benefit. All of their cards say that nukes are bad. The reason the Eglin evidence says nukes are bad is it says that disarm is bad is because it's cruel hope that nukes will ever be gone because nukes are bad, which they dropped from the action card as well, which means that any world where nukes exist is also one where it links to our net benefit to the perm because our argument is that nukes existing it doesn't give movements the energy to fight another day. Not presumption, always risk, but they said the plans disarm and cross-sex, we said we get rid of nukes, so this needed to be a separate topicality argument for this to be offense. Banning nuclear war is obviously bad. They said converse, but I'm not sure what that even means. They have no theoretical defense of this counterplan. Now, framework. We impact turned their interp. We said their interp is bad and impact turned it. Neuroscience does not assume debate. I don't care if it's proving generally. Debate is not like other spaces because we have to argue both sides so nothing gets internalized. We aren't extending fairness, just clash, so it doesn't matter if fairness doesn't matter. It's necessary to actualize the K and link turn subject formation. Drop. We said the words that it's necessary for the L to be seen as a problem with our research by comparison over time. That encourages third and fourth level testing rather than just pointing out minute flaws or having plan plus alternatives like the one in this debate. Their argument about ballot solvency is internalized in technical law so it doesn't happen. They dropped that alternative explanations like community changes and beliefs in which arguments are okay are what happened, not individual decisions. Never stopping the rounds doesn't matter because they said they weren't going for an in-round violence impact, so I'm not going to answer this. Switch side, 1% risk doesn't matter because they drop clash turns the K. Now, they said cut every card, that doesn't matter. It's unified by the plan, doesn't justify excluding it. Pre-round prep for months is the link to subject formation, not one debate. They haven't explained how one ballot changes it. We need to debate over multiple rounds, which is our motto. If they sacrifice it, we just assume we're behind on prep, so we never change our subjectivity, which means we're key for their offense. Now, their proper explanation of the alternative, they've dropped the net benefit of the perm, which is that Atkinson evidence, you should read it. It says that everyday struggles must unify around disarmament because it projects the vision of state invincibility. If they're going to say that it's a pick, picks are obviously bad. They drop interp, all can't do the plan, all is plan plus, and they don't get that. Nukes good is not violence, so that answers their argument because obviously, but it's still good to test it because we get better at debating it and they get to be half the time too, so there's not a reason that it's violent. They don't even have a warrant for this. They drop clash offense for picks being bad, reform and abolition being distinct, not sure what this is. Picks good for multiple angles, they can read multiple case or multiple disads. There's not a reason picks are uniquely key, but we have a reason that allowing them to get any assumption because they've dropped assumptions are infinite, so competing off them is impossible. They've dropped case simply must outweigh, and the circumvention link is excluded by our framework interpretation because Eglin card is only about Biden, Obama, and Trump trying to get North Korea to disarm, but the plan clearly link turns this because we say everyone should disarm, which is our answer to the incrementalism stuff, but if we win our interp, then we get to weigh the plan, and the plan happens, and the plan's good.
Alright, just give me a minute to make this. Okay, cool. Both of you ready? So, this was a close debate, and I ended up voting affirmative. I think the first place that I start is the question of framework. I think, actually, first of all, I'm going to say, I think this kind of plan is silly, and there is not really a world that I was going to vote on it. I think that arguing that possession and use are mutually exclusive is just kind of like a silly semantical distinction, and reading the full text of your card makes it abundantly clear that this isn't a serious argument. So then I go to the K page, actually err negative on the question of framework. I think the TOC frames the neg framing as a sort of like arbitrary infused reps K. I think the 2 and R is more reasonable than that. I think they make it clear that it's a question of models and that competitive incentives shape the arguments people read. So even if the affirmative is right that pre-run prep is an internal link to subjectivity, the actions you actually end up taking in round are shaped by what competitive incentives exist, i.e. like what you can do to win. So if you know that I, as a judge, have an obligation to reject things like racist representations, then you would avoid reading arguments that can be construed as such. And I buy the racism outweighs fairness in clash arguments. But despite leaning neg on framework, I end up voting affirmative for a couple of reasons. First, I find the permutation persuasive. I think the articulation of the alternative as a pick is both late breaking and shallowly explained. I think that the affirmative TOC explanation that the alternative is just all plus plan is probably true. I don't understand the mutual exclusivity between disarm and abolition from the 2 and R, and I think when the action sim card is extended across my flow, it only makes the permutation more convincing. I think that the 2 and R link articulation isn't specific enough to the affirmative, and that the non-unique argument is probably true, and the fact that the neg concedes that the affirmative is full global disarm on a different page makes it hard to buy the Eveland evidence, because pretty much the only real impact to it is rearm, and like cruel optimism as like a consequence of that. But I don't think that that's well warranted, especially when like they're conceding that the app gets full global disarm, and that's something they've defended since the 1AC. So thus the perm resolves the link and risk of offense always.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess I'll ask a question about that first. So the permutation, I guess like if the 2 and R were to have kept the alt explanation the same but improved the explanation of the link, would that have